I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our November Committee of the Whole meeting for the Community High School District 94 Board of Education. Mission statement, please.
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Thank you, Rich. Board agreements, please.
No surprises. No one, superintendent or board members, gets surprised at any time, in the meeting or between meetings.
Thank you, Lynn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Miss Casey Mayer?
Here.
Miss Doremus?
Present.
Mr. Nagel?
Present.
Mr. Sake?
Present.
Mr. Suniga?
Here.
Miss Munoz? Here.
All right, that brings us to public participation. This is the portion of our meeting when any member of the public can address the Board of Education on any topic. We welcome your comments and will carefully listen to your concerns. We will not be able to engage in a dialogue during public participation, but when appropriate, we will direct the administration to follow up. Presentations are limited to no more than 5 minutes per person, with a total time limit of 30 minutes for public participation. If you wish to make personal charges or complaints against individual employees, volunteers, or students of the district, we request that you send the board your concerns in writing rather than stating those concerns during public comment. If anyone currently present wishes to make public comment and hasn't already done so, please fill out one of the comment forms in the back of the room and hand it to someone seated at the table. And at this point, we received no electronic comments and no comment forms, so we will move on to reports and information.
I'll take this opportunity to make a public comment because I won't remember for board comments by next week, or next meeting. I happen to have been at Prairie Grove High School over the weekend, and by their field, they had this nice sign said "Invest in," promoting their booster club. What we're doing with putting up banners and things like that, and it said "Invest in your school," and it was a great big sign. It had a lot of information. Unfortunately, my wife was driving and she was following somebody, so I couldn't get a picture of it. But if we know anybody at District 155 Prairie Grove that could get a picture of that, I want to get a picture and bring it in and give it to the Booster Club. I caught it out of the corner of my eye, and it looked like a really nice message. So we get that and pass it on to the Booster Club that they can help promote the advertising signs and things like that.
What school district number did you say?
It's 155, the
155.
Prairie Grove High School, way up north, McHenry.
Thanks for that, Rich.
I don't have to worry about it.
Well, that brings us to Superintendent Search Leadership Profile. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having us this evening. Our team is very excited about coming to present the leadership profile. In the leadership profile, what we'll be doing is it will detail the qualities and characteristics of the next superintendent, what the board is looking for. It also is based on 3 information sources. One of those will be the board interviews, then the community engagement focus groups we conducted, and then the survey, and we'll go more in detail about those as well. BWP will be using that to screen our applicants for that position, which will be important to do. The board will be using the leadership profile to develop interview questions and will also help you when you rate the candidates using the rubric, which we will be providing for you as well. Also, it gives an opportunity for the candidates to read that to see what the board is saying is looking for, which is also very important with that too. In our focus groups, we had 7 different groups and we met multiple times with them. So we had more than 7 meetings and we had 55 persons who attended and participated in those. On the surveys, we had 419 respondents for English and 59 for Spanish, which is outstanding to have that quantity of responses for that. And then, of course, we interviewed the 7 board members. Our focus groups span from having support staff, faculty, district and building administrators, students, which were a great group to have to get their input and feedback, the PAC and division heads, the BPAC group, the parents and community, and then, of course, we interviewed the board members. When we compiled all that information and put together a frequency chart on that, we came up with the following strengths that were identified by the district. The first one was being diversity is highly valued. The second one is the involvement of a core group of parents. The third is a very strong and dedicated staff, both certified staff and support staff. Another highlight was the new and renovated facility, which is here. School spirit was mentioned also, which I thought was an important one. Having a one school district was the key because you're able to maneuver and be nimble when you need to make changes and adjustments. The variety of student supports was saw as a strength. And lastly, the financial condition was another one as well. As we shift to the challenges and issues, those were the needs for the diverse student body and community that District 94 serves. To strengthen the collaboration of the sending elementary districts, to bolster that, to make that even stronger for the articulation. And this is one that almost every district has too, is that learning loss due to the pandemic. It's not something you cure in 1 year and everyone moves on. And it goes beyond just academics. It's also the social emotional learning is important too. The next one was a challenge was the school board is divided at times. The communication and outreach with all stakeholders is a challenge. And lastly, staff turnover, to make sure when you attract the staff, you're able to keep them as well. So for the next superintendent, the qualities and characteristics were to have a skilled communicator, someone who's really dedicated and committed to the community and to the district, some person who is a very strong, active listener and has had proven success of improving academics and social emotional learning, someone who is very visible and accessible within the school community and outside of the school community, someone who's a collaborator and also has experience and truly understands diversity, very student-focused, someone who earns and displays trust and integrity and credibility, someone who has high school experience both in the classroom and also administrator. The next one is a very important one as a superintendent, sense of humor. Got to have that. And then establishes relationships with a variety of stakeholders, both within the school and in the community. And finally, someone who can build teams, both externally and internally. At this time, I will turn it over to Omar, and he'll give you more information about the demographics.
Thank you, Phil. So as you will see, the survey demographics, the number that we had was great. 478 surveys, that's a wonderful number to have. So as Phil mentioned, 419 were in English, 59 were in Spanish. And you can see the breakdown between, people who had children that attend school here, people who live in the attendance area, employees of the district, and people who are not employed in the district. For district strengths from the survey, we have excellent teachers and staff. The diversity came up again as a strength. A supportive community. Educational options and programs. And good school facilities. Very similar to the groups that we interviewed. Under district's challenges and issues, we also have educational options and programs. You might ask yourself, how can we have both? Well, because there are good programs here, right? So where the challenges come is, do you guys have the best program? So looking at that for the new leader. Community relations, curriculum, personnel, funding, and equity. So those were the district challenges that were identified through the survey. The characteristics and skills and experiences for the next superintendent: communication skills, interpersonal skills, managerial skills, understands public relations, organizational skills, school board relations, integrity and trust, commitment to the community, good decision maker, active listener, student-centered, experience in multicultural environment, experience as a teacher and administrator, and experience in strategic planning. Next, I'll pass it on to Mark to identify the leadership profile itself.
So what we do is we try to combine as much information from the day in the district, the community engagement piece that we put together, and then the survey. And what we do is we look for common themes, common topics, common words, things that repeat themselves in both. And that means going through pages and pages of comments from individuals who we had in small groups, as well as people who we've talked to. With that, we come out with this master profile. This is something to help, again, guide you a little bit as you're doing your interviewing. So it's a little further down the road, but it's something to keep in mind. So the leadership profile, by adding pieces of the survey and the community engagement and the interviews together, we're looking for. These are the things we should be looking for, and these are the things that we're focusing on. A relationship builder with excellent interpersonal skills. You've heard that word, interpersonal skills, mentioned by both Omar and Phil. It's an important piece in the role of a superintendent. You can't have somebody who's standoffish. Second item was an experienced educator with strong managerial, organizational, and strategic planning skills. So that's something that as we're talking to candidates, we're going to ask about that. It's not everybody that brings strong strategic planning skills, but maybe there is a candidate, maybe we're looking at two people equally. One has strong skills in the area of strategic planning. That person may get the nod. So that's an important piece. A committed leader to the district and community who is accessible and visible. I think you've heard that through all three of our presentations. Committed, that term committed. We were told under no certain circumstances somebody isn't going to come in, spend a year here, and run out the door for someplace else. They need to make a commitment. And so here it is in writing. A successful leader who communicates strategically and builds integrity and trust. Those are really key words. And sometimes it takes a while to get to that point. It takes time to earn that trust. A student-oriented leader who establishes strong relationships with the school board, staff, parents, and community. This is a one-school high school district. That should be very doable. You want someone to put the effort into it. A leader who focuses on improving academics and social emotional learning. I think that came out of the community engagement piece quite a bit when we were here for the day in the district. An administrator with a sense of humor who exhibits exceptional collaborative and team-building skills that bring about the best in others. It's about team. It's all about that. And finally, a leader who clearly understands diversity and values a diverse population. And if you wanted to add one more piece, walks on water, has a money tree in his or her backyard, those kinds of things, but we didn't put those down. So those were the things that add up to how we look at candidates when we do our screening.
So the leadership profile that you just listed, that's the master document that you're intending to use to screen your candidates?
Well, we use everything in here, to be honest. There's pieces all along. The themes that we hear from all three parts, they ring true for us. But this kind of summarizes it all.
So then, at this point, then, it's very important that the board agree that we're comfortable with this and that this does reflect the person that we're looking at. So at this point, I would like to go around the board for any thoughts and comments.
Sure.
Do you think this, are you comfortable with this description of who we're looking for, or do you think there should be some adjustments? So Penny, what do you think?
It's really good to me. It's highlighted a lot of the things that, are important.
So we find a superintendent that meets, that hits these, you feel they're going to be the right person?
I think that a lot of the key components or characteristics are bolded and clearly communicated, so yes.
Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a long list.
Yes.
I think that's going to
Yeah.
be one of the, you're not going to find everybody that's very strong in every one of those.
No.
So I think it's still going to come down to weighing one over the other for us. But yes.
Rich, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've hit a lot of the strong points. To me, it kind of looks like a generic superintendent profile. Probably 90% of all the searches anybody does is going to come up with most of these. One of the things, to Gary's point, it's a long list. You're not going to find everything, everybody. One of the things we may want to do is prioritize, so that if somebody comes in and has 8 of the 10, that's the 8 that are more important than just going down the list, unless this list is already kind of prioritized.
You can do that. You can do that as you're looking at candidates and you're looking to determine who's going to move forward. That would be a good way to do it. Prioritizing who hits, which of these candidates hits the most of these highlighted or bold-faced qualities.
I guess one half step we ought to look at is agreeing to what the order that these are in should be in terms of what's more important than others.
You could do that. Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is commonly done
No.
with a leadership profile?
No, we really, generally most boards look at this and they look at the whole spread and look at the pieces from the community engagement, then look at the pieces from the survey. If you took a little time to kind of bring it together, you'll see that there's so many common themes. They lead into these statements here. And you can rank order them, you can checklist them, put a check mark box next to them. You can do anything you want, but these are qualities that you want in a leader. You can rank order 1 to 5 and then a second tier. We've seen it done in a lot of different ways, but most boards really take the summary piece, that summary page, and use that as a guide.
I'm a data person, so.
Well, you can make your own data. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. So this list here, this list, is semi-prioritized. It says next superintendent.
The survey list,
Yes.
those were forced choice answers. That's prioritized.
Yes, yes. And I'm really pleased looking at this because I think the way the survey was presented and how the answers came out, it is kind of what we are looking for. And so it was kind of eye-opening in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very, very pleased to see that, so thank you.
You could use that. I mean, that's, a rank order. I think, there are 10 items on there, 12 items, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I didn't count them, but I do like the way you kind of put these all together, and it is prioritized, like communication skills was a big one for people.
That was a big
Yeah.
hit on everything.
Yeah.
It came up everywhere.
Yeah,
And I'll tell you that every district we work with, communication skills is way at the top.
yeah. And I'm really pleased to hear that people value our teachers here, that came out so high as a
Very
strength
much so.
in this district, because I agree on that, very much so, 100%, that our teachers are what keeps this school going.
So to Rich's point then, does the board want to do some kind of prioritizing of this kind of list, or do we want to, when we get the slate of candidates, start looking at, okay, how well do they hit on these things, and, more score on the candidates rather than score on the list? Well, what do people think?
I'd rather score on the candidates. I tend to think that we all are going to have different opinions on what the priority of different items are. I think coming up with a fixed list is just, you're going to come up with an average, and that's not really helpful.
So your suggestion is, as we look at the candidates, we'll see how well they hit on the
Yeah.
different areas.
Yeah.
Rob, the key at that next step is really a consensus. And there may be, like Gary is saying, there may be some ways to look at the individual candidates and pick things that they're really strong on, and somebody else may be a little weaker. But then when you come together at the end, you build a consensus as to, when looking at all these candidates, candidate A, by far, covered most of the areas that we're looking for. And by consensus, you'll do that, rather than a pure rank order.
Art,
Makes it a little easier.
When you meet with the board on December 5th and talk about not only the slate of candidates, but the workshop for interviewing, will you review that process with
Yeah,
them?
we talked a little bit about consensus building,
Okay, good.
how to get to that point. And we're going to, you brought it up, John, it's a perfect segue into, and I'm sorry if we interrupt the flow, we can come right back, but I wanted to address, we're also thinking we'd like to send the questions to you early. So if you want to use our sample questions, you'll have them in your hands before the 5th, and it won't be, oh, I've never seen these questions before, we got to think about it. This way you'll have them, you can think them through, you think the types of questions you may want to ask. You do not have to use ours. However, it does generate some thinking. Just by looking at the questions, it makes you start thinking, oh yeah, I have a question similar to that. And to be honest, you can only ask maybe 2 questions per board member, 3 at the most in the time frame allowed.
Could you send us the sample questions?
we'll get those to you early.
By
Yeah.
the end of this week? Because considering we have the joint conference, then we have the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah.
And then that,
I
literally
actually
the
have a
next week.
posted note to ask you about it.
Good.
So, and we would just ask that they be kept extremely confidential, since they'll be in your hands 2 weeks before, that, hide them somewhere, whatever, because we certainly wouldn't want any chance that those get out. But we were still talking
Rich,
about.
are you comfortable with the consensus that we not rank these and we kind of look at it from the candidate perspective? Are you comfortable with that?
Make my own ranking.
Feel free and share what you think.
Kathy?
And Lynn, did you have more thoughts, or are you comfortable?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Kathy, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I forgot them and waiting all this time, but thanks for asking. I basically agree with Rich that this is pretty generic. I can't imagine us looking for someone who is a bad communicator and not trustworthy. And if we see Big Butter Jesus standing on the side of the road somewhere, we might just want to hire him.
Don't forget
right off
walking
the
on
street.
water.
Yes,
that part.
that's critical piece, or, Mohammed in the mountain. But overall, I think this is where common sense comes in. We know these are attributes that any good leader is what we want. What we're going to seek from the interview process is the individuality that makes that person stand up above and beyond. Again, Big Butter Jesus, he'll come to us when it's time. So there's my thoughts.
Okay, Giovanni, what do you think?
Johnny?
Can you top that?
I don't think I can. Big Butter Jesus. I don't think I can top that. No, but I think
Me to sing it? You don't.
no. I think it's gonna be kind of like similar to that. Where I think it's gonna come down to. I mean, I like what we have, but I think it's gonna come down to the individual interviews. So.
All right, so it sounds like we have a board consensus that we're comfortable with the leadership profile. So that's why I wanted the presentation of that tonight, so that you have that consensus before you move forward with doing your screening.
We're good, and as of today, we're at 34, I think, 34 candidates.
34, yeah.
34, it closes in a couple of days, and there's always a few last minute, it's like paying your taxes. On April 15th, there's people in line at the post office. So we will have some additional candidates. And then again, there's this break period where everyone's scattering about this. There's not only the Triple I conference downtown, but the National Alliance of Black School Executives is their national conference at the same time, and then Thanksgiving. So it kind of puts everything on a pause, so to speak, but gets right back into action. And that's why we'll be back on December 5th. The next steps also call for you to determine what your interview dates are going to be as a collective group. And, you know, we don't have to chaperone you through that. John and Attila can do that. But
And since you brought that up, I was going to bring that up. If you folks could send out one of those survey things to the board so we can
We'll
start
send out a doodle
identifying
poll.
availability for those 2 weeks. Hopefully, I know it's a lot of activities going on in December, but hopefully there's a fair number of days those weeks that we can all be available for interviews, because we want to definitely get this in.
yeah, a couple things to think of. You can do 3 people on 2 nights and do 6. You're looking for an hour to hour and 15 minutes apiece, so you're going to need about 6 to 7 hours or so spread over. You can do 3 nights of 2 per night. You can do a Friday night and a Saturday. You can do a Saturday and a Sunday. There's so many ways to do it based upon your availability. Your personal lives do get in the way. We understand you have families. So these are things that we say, get out in front as quick as you can so that everybody has some common dates to do these. That wraps
Board
up.
members, could I ask for your input on what time would you like to start? Because these will be obviously most likely weeknights. So what would be the earliest that you would want to start if we fit 3 in an evening?
5 or 5:30 for me.
Be the earliest for you?
5 is too early for me.
So what would be the earliest?
5:30 is borderline, but I could probably do 5:30, but that's borderline.
6 o'clock would be fair?
Yeah.
6 o'clock?
Oh,
6 would be the absolute earliest, and that's pushing it on some days.
Started at 6:30?
So if you do a 6, the pattern for 6, 7:15, and 8:30.
All right, so we'll get some idea what dates people are available so we can get that locked down.
Attila and I can put out a doodle poll.
Kathy, are you comfortable with 6?
6 is really difficult, but
Would
I'll
6:15
do the
work better?
best I can.
Would 6:15 work better?
No.
Or 6:30?
Yeah, we'll
6:30 would work
6:30,
better, but if you schedule it at 6, I will do the best I can to be there.
Well, then let's make it 6:30 so we can
6:30
make
is
sure that
fair.
it's
Yep.
comfortable for everybody.
Yep.
The way my world goes, there's no guarantee with me. My
Well, we wanna-
doors don't close at 6.
We want to make it as accessible for all board members as possible, so if 6:30 works better, then we'll do
I also don't want
that.
to disrupt what needs to happen because my work schedule happens to be all over the board sometimes. So, like I said,
But it-
do the
yeah,
best
if
you
we,
can.
if we start
And
at
if it
6,
revolves around me, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
well, it's revolving around all 7 board members, and if we start at 6:30, we could fit 3 in a night, and that's fair. And then if you can be here at 6:30, that'd be fantastic. If something comes up, then it comes up. Yeah. And that really goes to anybody, not just you. I mean, because things do come up in life, right?
They do, unfortunately.
All right, anything else regarding the superintendent search?
Got a couple questions. You're going to vet all of the candidates that you present us?
Yeah, we do that
And
prior
do
to
we
presenting.
see any of that feedback, or is that considered confidential?
When we meet with you, we'll review that.
I also
But we're
have a-
not going to say, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, so-and-so said that. No, it'll be general in nature.
On December 5th, is that on December 5th you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I had a problem interpreting the survey. I live in West Chicago community with 56% responses. Does that mean that 44% of the people responding to the survey are not from West Chicago?
Probably staff.
Well, I'm adding up the staff, and that's still not nearly enough to cover the difference in the number. So I'm just wondering, is that because people didn't respond to that question, or people that took the survey didn't necessarily live in the community?
Or are they in the district and not, I was just gonna say, are they in the district but not in this, in West Chicago?
I was going to say, they could be Winfield, they could be.
Well, it says live in the district.
Oh, sorry, Rich.
Okay. Going through the survey, I didn't quite understand exactly how the numbers were derived, so I mean, that's a kind of a glaring example. There were other questions I had as I went through that, so as far as how you got your numbers, your percentages. That was a big one.
Any insights on that, on how that worked?
One of our concerns when we talked about the survey was making sure that we were getting responses from stakeholders, not general public.
The survey piece, so you're talking about the survey piece? Oh, that's a page, yeah.
Now, to be honest, I'm not sure it has a big effect on the results you get, but it does bring to question some of the results of the survey.
So 83% of the Spanish respondents live in the attendance area, only 46% of the English respondents. Is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to the first question. I live in West Chicago Community High School District attendance
We don't
area.
have the questions in front of us, yeah.
So 56% said yes. That was 233 people. Total response was 413, which means almost 200.
Chose not to answer or might not live in the district.
For staff, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't think everybody answered every question, right?
No, they don't. No.
But they're not limited to one question per list, right? I mean, they can
Correct.
answer as many as
They
are
can skip
applicable.
all over.
All right.
It never balances out. I've never seen one where the number of respondents and the percentage, they never balance out. People skip by accident or by choice.
Did you have anything else, Rich? Or are you comfortable?
Can I ask a question, Mark, just to clarify? We were talking about the time before. If we start at 6:30, then the interviews are at 6:30, 7:45, and 9. Is that, in your experience, too late in an evening?
It's okay. You know, you can make your interview schedule any way you want. You can give 1 hour and then 5 minutes in between, if you would rather do it that way. What we say is an hour and 15 minutes, interview, walk in, introduce, walk out, that whole piece, the whole segment's an hour and 15 minutes apiece. So you can do it in an hour and 5 minutes apiece. You can shrink that and start them at 8:40, but I don't think 9's too late. The candidates should be pumped up. They should be pretty ready for it. Yeah, it's the end of a long day. It's how do you folks feel? Do you feel it's stretching you out a little too much? If you're not feeling like you can give that third person that night all your attention, then maybe we should look at 3 nights of 2, something like that. You want everything to be perfect, no excuses to not see the best in the candidate.
By what date do you need to know how many nights and which nights?
5th is fine.
We can talk about it further on the 5th.
Yeah.
And one thing that board members can think about in terms of scheduling leading to a discussion on that on the 5th is our experiences with the interview meeting where we were interviewing to hire interim superintendents. And that was a long night, multiple interviews. So we can all kind of remember, did we think that was okay? Was that too much? And that should feed into what we want to do with
Yeah, it's
with
your
these.
comfort. It's basically however you feel will be the most comfortable for all 7 of you.
It also depends on how many dates are available. If we've got
That's
a fair number of
I'm
dates
telling you,
available,
that's
then
gonna
we
be
don't
your
have to
biggest
stack
problem.
them to be as
Yeah.
late of a night. If we're tight on dates, then we might have to go for longer meetings. Depends on the availability. All right, then, if there's nothing else, thank you, gentlemen, for coming
Good
out.
to see everybody. Good luck, and let's see how many come in at the last minute. But we're in excellent shape. Very happy with the number and the quality of people.
Thank you.
That
And
sounds
people
good,
who are
thank you.
committed to 94 in not the other competitive searches that are going on, which says a lot about what District 94 has done.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to college and career pathways, geometry and construction.
Throw something out there to be thought about before
Sure.
we go on to college and career paths. It'll just take half a second.
Sure.
And it's something maybe we ought to discuss at the next meeting. But I'm wondering if we ought to be considering where in this process, if in this process there is room, because I think it would be very that none of us on the board necessarily have an experience and a different vision that might be helpful for us as we get.
You're saying comments on specific candidates that we're looking at?
Yes, it's ultimately obviously our decision, but I think getting some insight back from them would be helpful for all of us, including through the process.
So by looking at the resumes or by participating in the interviews? What are you?
I would guess it's, no, not necessarily participating, but interacting as the candidates maybe come in and meet and just any observations that they may feel would be valuable to us as we make our decision.
Any thoughts from our dynamic duo on this topic?
Well, I don't think it would be appropriate for us to be in the interviews. I think that's a board function and obviously that decision-making process.
Having recently gone through this in my previous school district, when they hired my replacement, I was not involved. I gave them similar to the leadership profile. I gave them feedback, and I can give you my opinion about the characteristics that are included in here. Having said that, I do agree with and understand. Very similar to this. I did not sit in on interviews, obviously, not give feedback on individual candidates to my. That was really by design. I'm uncomfortable participating in that process because that's not what my role is. July 1st, as a community member, if you'd asked me as a community member to sit in or to back, just because my experience in the business, I would be comfortable with that, but I feel as your interim superintendent, I don't know that.
Well, certainly if you have some thoughts as far as the profile that we're looking at, I'm sure this board is very interested in what the two of you would have to say in that regard. So certainly, we'd appreciate you sharing that with us at some point.
I'd be happy to talk about that too, and then include that in our weekly.
Are you good, Kathy? You good with, are you good with their thoughts, or do you want to go further?
Sorry, I apologize, I missed.
Absolutely. I just said in my previous role, when I transitioned out and they hired my replacement, I did not participate in the process. Once they had their slate of, I think it was 6, I was not even present that evening. We had another staff member who was present, who had welcomed the candidates and went through that process, similar to, I think it was roles, and I think that works out well. I just don't know that it's proper. And I'll give you an example. If one of my friends walked through the door and was one of the candidates, I don't think that's fair that I give you feedback on he or she. Us in a very compromising position. And I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for
I
Antonio.
understand they're not in meeting, but feedback through the process as to what we should, helping us to do a good job with your insight as. There's all kinds of pieces that you two could share with us. Giving some extra guidance through the process.
I would be comfortable doing that, definitely.
Maybe by reviewing the questions that BWP is going to be sending us to ask and adding some things, or, eliminating some of the questions so we can spend more time on the important things. That way you aren't involved directly with the candidates, but you're involved in the process.
And some feedback on the leadership profile kind of things, because obviously the two of you have a very good image of what's needed in our district today. Are you good, Kathy, or anything else?
I think you hit upon probably the narrow role that I think would, in my opinion, would be appropriate for us, would be to help identify some of the qualities and characteristics without looking at the candidates. I think John's example is very apt. I think to what degree that happens, when that happens, the conversation that occurs is going to be a logistical issue, given the time period that we have remaining.
Again, this is something we can all, I just wanted to, I've been thinking. Every day, living in the community. Further discussion 2 weeks from now, after everybody's kind of digested it and thought about it a little bit. It's not necessarily.
Some good thoughts, Kathy. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. Let's
Sorry.
move.
Please, no apologies at all.
Let's move on to geometry and construction.
Thank you again for the opportunity to share another snapshot of some of our current academic work. Tonight, CTE Division Chair Mark Wolf and I are going to summarize the state's college and career pathway endorsement program, as well as a new course that we'll be offering next year for 24-25 called Geometry and Construction. Ultimately, we'll conclude with the future goals in our pathway development. So with that, we'll talk a little bit first about the college and career pathways with a focus on their purpose. In 2016, the Post-Secondary Workforce Act established college and career readiness as a formal state goal and began promoting the merging of academics and career training. The Governor's Cabinet on Children and Youth joined with numerous public and private sector entities, including the Illinois State Board of Education. Ultimately, the goal they defined is to equip students to be successful in college, career, and beyond through adequate preparation and the timely introduction to a robust network of opportunities. The shift that I think we're seeing here is away from the push with No Child Left Behind and how much of a focus that there was on state testing and a very narrow definition of academic success. Last year, this collaboration culminated in House Bill 3296, which built upon the Post-Secondary Workforce Act by creating the college and career pathways in a variety of career clusters. These can lead to endorsements that occur on a student's high school diploma and transcript. For just an overview, pathways are defined as aligned courses, training, and career development experience that result in a collegiate or occupational preparation in a particular employment sector. Endorsements are defined as formal state and district acknowledgement that a student has successfully engaged in career exploration, learning, and skill development in a particular discipline. And the hope is that this results then in eligibility for post-secondary study or career credentials and success. Ultimately, the bill requires school districts offer at least one endorsement beginning in the spring of 2024, as well as additional pathways for graduating classes that follow. HB 3296 outlines a four-step process for students to earn an endorsement, and that's what you see on the screen. It requires first an individualized post-secondary plan that includes career research, a written college and/or career plan, a resume and personal statement, which must be updated each year. Next, the student must earn credit in a series of courses in an area of the labor market that aligns to a need in Illinois. And that is something that the state and then the district would jointly identify as what we'd consider a career pathway. One or more of these classes must be an AP class or a dual credit course that's approved by a community college. As a caveat, one challenge that many districts face in offering dual credit courses is that high school teachers are required to have a master's in the content area in order to teach a dual credit course. So many of us have them in either administration, curriculum, technology, whatever it may be. So we don't have as many faculty who have endorsements specifically in their discipline. In addition to the courses, students must engage in 2 workplace learning experiences, 2 team-based challenges that include mentoring, and an 80-hour internship. Finally, students must also demonstrate that they have achieved college readiness in English and math. Ultimately, that's something that's determined by the school itself. So currently, the state recognizes 7 pathways. You can see them there. Agricultural, food, and natural resources, arts and communication, finance and business services, health sciences and technology, human and public service, information technology, and finally, manufacturing, engineering, technology, and trades. Beginning this year, D94 students have the opportunity to earn an endorsement in 2 pathways. So that will either be the finance and business services or human and public services. Students can attain a culinary endorsement by completing our 3-course Family and Consumer Science series of Foods 1, 2, and 3, which would then earn them a credit hour at COD, as well as a formal food sanitation manager certification, as if they complete the other 3 endorsements. So the courses themselves are not enough. They must create all 4 components. The second endorsement is available in the Human and Public Services career cluster, and that's upon completion of Child Development 1 and 2, and then Intro to Education. In this particular pathway, students would earn 6 hours of credit at COD in addition to the endorsement. So if we take a step back, as we continue this process, our goal is to develop pathways that appeal to our students and provide them with the skills and experiences that prepare them to earn additional credentials, certifications, or degrees. We want to promote the sentiment that the college for all rhetoric needs to be broadened to become post-high school credentials for all. So again, that's a shift to looking at a variety of opportunities for students, most also acknowledging that we want them to be having real world experiences regardless of whether they're going to be going on to college or not. We want to stop treating academic and vocational education as, quote, different silos. They need to be merged together. In this next section that we're going to look at, Mark is going to focus on the geometry and construction course and talk about how that is going to fit into what we've got going on in terms of pathways.
All right, thank you, Mary. And I'd like to begin by thanking the board and the administration for the support of our career and tech ed areas. I've been here for 14 years now, and it's hard to believe that we're starting our 10th year with our new culinary art. I keep calling them new, but they're 10 years old now, our culinary arts classrooms. But we would never have been able to offer those 3 levels of foods classes in our old facility that we had when I began here in 2010. And now we're about 3 years into our manufacturing lab, and then I'm excited for what we have to offer next with this new opportunity with geometry and construction. So geometry and construction is a tried and true curriculum and program that's nationwide. It began in 2005 with 2 CTE teachers from Loveland, Colorado, Scott Burke and Tom Moore. And these 2 gentlemen are still involved with this program. They still conduct the training. Scott Burke is planning on coming to do a site visit here in the near future to give us some more tips and help us get this program started successfully. During their first year, they started with 80 students, and now over 700 high schools around the country offer this program. So it has become very popular in all sorts of schools, from inner city schools to suburban schools to rural schools as well. Some local school districts, ranging from large unit districts like Naperville 203 to large high school districts like Maine 207, District 214 in Arlington Heights, and single school districts like Ridgewood 234. And Steve Balhan, Will, and myself have visited Naperville Central, Maine East, and Ridgewood in the last 6 months to get some insight into how they offer their program and some of the benefits that they've seen. Who can take it? It's open to any student who has completed Algebra 1 Honors, or Algebra 1 Sheltered, and who have not taken geometry. So they cannot, if they have taken geometry, they cannot go back and take this course again because it is a geometry course. It is not just a construction course. They will get all the geometry skills that they would normally get in a traditional geometry class, but they are going to apply them with construction projects. So it's a 2-period class, co-taught by a math teacher and a CTE teacher. It's designed to enable students to learn geometry and construction standards and skills through real-world applications. It is a college level or a college prep course that teaches the same Common Core math standards as our traditional geometry course. Students will be assessed on these standards, but they'll have the opportunity, instead of being in a traditional classroom, to actually apply these skills and standards by building things and using construction skills. And they'll earn 2 grades and get 2 credits for this course. Some examples of problems or activities that they would see, anything from converting a picnic table measurement 8 by 5 feet and do a scale drawing down to a 1/4 inch representing 1 foot, or a garage needs new concrete foundation. It's square is a square of 24 feet on each side, and then you have to calculate the diagonal. And then on the next slide, we can kind of see how these align with Common Core geometry standards. So I can identify scale factor and perform dilations. I can use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for missing sides of a triangle. I can use ratio and proportions to solve problems, and I can use trigonometry to find missing sides of a right triangle. So they're going to be using these same geometry skills that they would in a classroom and seeing how they could apply in the real world, which students have always said for years, when am I ever going to use this? By taking a class like this, they can really see this is how you can potentially use this. When is it taught? It will be a 2-period block class. So obviously that'll depend on sectioning and through the course selection process, but it'll have to take up 2 classes. It'll either be, first and second, or second and third, or ninth and 10th. So students do have to allot 2 periods in their schedule to take this course. And then where will it be taught? Part of what makes it unique is the geometry class will be taught in a traditional classroom. We do have our prop shop that has a lot of tools and construction materials where we can teach some of the basic skills. And then at all the site visits we did, they do a good amount of their construction classes outdoors because part of the things that they build cannot fit outdoors or through doors to get them out of the building. So a lot of the building is done outside. And when Scott visits, he'll kind of help us plan out some of that and talk about some of those possibilities. In terms of some of the CTE and construction pieces. Here's a video that we showed students when we presented this course last month. And I began, before I showed it, how many students have taken a construction class. I knew the answer beforehand. None of them have, because none of our feeder districts have. We don't have any other construction courses, so it's really something new. And after viewing this video, the students were really surprised at what they could potentially do. So go ahead, Will.
Combines the geometry math credit with an electric construction trades credit.
The best thing about geometry and construction is definitely the hands-on learning that I can't really get in any of that math class.
Math is sometimes a hard concept to understand and grasp. So what the construction does, it allows them to apply what they learned in the math and actually use it, see the purpose for it.
I think a lot of other students are hands-on learners like I am. It's just easier because everybody's like, why do we take this math class? What does this apply in real life? When you take this class, you're like, oh, that's fun. It makes sense now.
But it also offers them a direct path into construction if that's what they need or desire. It could offer a much better part-time job than just working fast food or something. So it can set them up with a financial stability that will allow them to take community college classes or to go into a four-year university, be working outside during the summer.
The best way to be in this program is meeting new people and being able to take this knowledge and move it anywhere that you want.
You become like really close friends, and because you have to all work together, too. There's no like separation. Like girls can do the same stuff as guys, and guys do the same stuff as girls. So it's really nice that you actually get to work together with other people.
With your friends, teachers always there for you. It's not just an individual textbook-based class. You can actually go outside and do your work, do whatever you have to do, and it's all fun.
All right, so as you can see, a lot of hands-on learning. And some of the things that students may build, a variety of things on there, from picnic tables to bookcases to chicken coops to tiny houses to sheds. A lot of the programs that we visited, sheds were kind of their main focus early on, especially what is needed around the campus, potentially storage for PE department, athletic teams, outdoors, soccer, tennis, things like that. Several schools built press boxes for their baseball or softball fields, and even houses. So Evanston Township High School kind of has one of the premier programs really in the nation. They have built houses all over their community that families have purchased and live in. There's an example right there of a home that they built. So every year, I don't know if they necessarily build a house per year, but there are students working on a home that is being placed in their community each year. So obviously that could be something years down the road, but the potential is there to really make an impact and show students what they could do, and also be very proud of what they are a part of. So why teach this really demonstrates the real-world application of geometry to students, gives students a concrete understanding of math concepts. Again, kind of eliminates that question of what's the point of learning this, or when am I going to use this? Helps promote the retention of math skills. If you can do it or explain it, you're most likely going to retain it. Is very engaging and hands-on. We don't have a lot of project-based. There's projects throughout our curriculum, but there's not a lot of hands-on end-of-product type courses that we are able to offer. Gives students a chance to develop construction skills, be exposed to different kinds of thinking, and then also, as we've mentioned previously in this presentation, introducing them to potential career pathways. And how do they use construction skills? Again, even in our manufacturing and drafting classes, very few students have ever even held a tape measure. A few may have used a hammer. Almost none have used power tools or anything like that by the time they've gotten to high school. So they will use a lot of tools, from hammers to tape measures to saws to power saws, table saws, miter saws, things like that. And it connects to a lot of different careers, ranging from architecture to the building trades, civil, mechanical engineering, interior design, urban planning, or just personal use and life skills that they can benefit from down the road. All right, Mary will talk about next steps.
So I'd like to briefly preview some of the other pathways that we hope to develop during the next few years. So I wanted to share with you that as we expand these pathways, it's critical that we communicate the value, again, of pairing academics and vocational education. We want students to fully engage in courses and experience what meaningfully interests them. And those are things that will improve their ability to excel. Again, we want to, excuse me, I clicked too far. We want to restore that balance between academics and vocational programs. It's not only about job skill, job creation, but it's about finding a way to raise standards of achievement overall. In addition to that, we want kids to be able to make informed decisions about what they want to do with their lives. So if we're only offering requirements, college prep classes, then students are not able to be exposed to other kinds of potential pathways or choices until they go to college. And that can be, closing a lot of doors for them. So with that, next year, students will have the opportunity to take 2 blended courses, Healthcare 1 and Healthcare 2. They will provide students with the opportunity to learn foundational vocabulary as well as health science background knowledge in the discipline. So in conjunction with our current human anatomy course, that sequence would contribute to a health occupations endorsement. Again, in CTE, we'll be reviewing those courses to evaluate our technology offerings. Since we were one of the first districts in the area to go one-to-one so many years ago, technology is something that has always been a strength here. So we'd like to look at 2 IT pathways, potentially one in coding and then one in computer science. And then as today's presentation has emphasized, geometry and construction is going to enable us to begin building a construction pathway, and ultimately that would involve dual credit through TCD or COD. And just kind of as a side note on the geometry and construction, when we introduced that to students later last month, we had 59 ninth graders and we had 37 10th graders who expressed interest in the class. And that's without 8th graders even having the opportunity to be exposed to this as an option. As Mark mentioned, we did have students who were there because they were enrolled in drafting who had already taken geometry, who wanted to know if they could take the class again just so that they could be a part of this. We also had kids who just wanted to know, could they take a study hall and be an assistant, that kind of thing. So I do think that this is going to be really a significant shift for us, for kids and engagement, and it's something that's really exciting. And then finally, we're going to look at how could we meet the needs of students who have an interest in automotive technology. That is consistently the most popular concentration from our district at the Technology Center of DuPage. An automotive pathway would provide students with, again, new skills, earning an endorsement, but it would also enable them to earn industry credentials while they're still in high school, which is something that's incredibly valuable. But most importantly, this pathway is the kind of thing that would encourage students who are passionate about cars to, come to school, go to class, earn credits to graduate. So we're always looking for what that carrot is, and that's the kind of thing that we think would really be serving parts of our population in school that just school is not speaking to them yet. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you, as Mark did, for not only your time, but the financial support that you have invested in electives. It's expensive, right? But we also want to know that that's something that's allowing students to discover their own pathway, and it's providing opportunities that they may not ever have anywhere else. So thank you all for that.
That looks like an amazing program. Thank you for the presentation. Any board member questions or comments?
A couple questions and comments. My understanding is that the pathway is a multi-year progression, not just a class. Is that correct? I took a seminar with Lake Zurich High School last year. They have a very well-developed and impressive pathways program. Maybe we can swap a visit to see our Pringle for their pathways program. It talked about how involved they get with the community and businesses at internships, and they get grants and things like that. So if you haven't talked to them yet, I would suggest maybe getting up there and seeing how they do things. But my understanding is it's a couple of year progression, not just limited to one class. So are we planning on setting that up eventually?
You're completely right that it is a 3-course sequence that's required. So as you could see from foods, or even in our education pathway, that could be 3 single semester classes. Sometimes they're full year, but yes, there is a sequence that has to occur in addition to the other things that you were mentioning. They have to do, there has to be mentoring involved, there has to be competition involved, there has to be, internship involved. So it is a significant commitment for a student, but there are also financial implications for them if they walk away with that endorsement too. So there's things that are through teaching opportunities, just financial aid. So it has a lot of value to students as well as the school as a whole.
I think it's a tremendous program, and given our demographics, I think it's something we should really get behind.
We appreciate hearing that because we're very enthusiastic about it, definitely.
I was gonna say thank you so much for all the work that you guys have done, because like when I was in school, like the push for vocation, like I know it was there, but like now it's just like huge, and I love to see that because you're saying we're serving all of our students, and I'm very excited. This looks very, very cool. So thank you for everything you guys do.
Yeah, 2 comments really. First of all, this sounds amazing and really exciting. And I know a lot of the times like we hear about things before they happen, but definitely would love to hear like once things are up and running. And obviously you already have so much interest in it, but definitely it would be nice to get invited to see like, in real time the way it works. Because I think that sometimes we kind of just hear about things, but we don't really see. So it's nice to put to see something in real time, to be able to, speak to the many great things that are happening here. So, but definitely real excited to see this happen for students here.
We'd be happy to have you.
Mary and Mark, there are courses that we're currently offering that are part of that pathway. So I didn't know if that was clear, Penny, or not, but this isn't going to happen. Some of these courses are actually happening right now.
Right, but the construction one, right? That hasn't happened.
Right, that'll just be starting in
Yeah,
the fall.
so when that happens, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I think that geometry and construction is one of the most exciting things I've ever heard of. I wish I had that in high school. Maybe then I wouldn't be at this point in my life and be spatially impaired. I would know how to use a hammer.
I was fortunate enough to grow up at a time that CT was a very foundational part of education, and before it kind of went away for a while. So it's good to see this come back and take it to a whole other level, even beyond what was taking place back then.
We used to have programs like that here a number of years ago. And I'd mentioned District 155 earlier about something, and they also have an auto shop on campus. So.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to come back and have some conversations about that.
Well, one of the great things about our trips to Ridgewood and Maine East that Mark alluded to is that some of them also have auto shops as well too, and we were able to see how they're able to make those spaces work together. And for our kids, they wouldn't have to take 4 hours out of their day to go to TCD. They'd be able to do it more conveniently here. So that's something we definitely want to talk about more in the future.
I love that it's a great example of taking the classroom learning and, okay, this is how you can actually use it in the real world. That's a wonderful thing.
College and career pathways is all, but I'm listening to it with a little bit more trepidation, partially because I always think when government gets in the way of teaching, they put hurdles in there, and it also makes me a little bit nervous. While I think it opens tremendous opportunities for all students, I remember the days of my high school years where certain groups were kind of focused into different areas. Then we went to the flip side where everybody was pushed into college, whether it was right decision or not, and had people falling through the cracks. But I love the thought that we open it up for everybody and give every student individually the opportunity to achieve what their dream is. But at any time government's in the way, it makes me nervous. Best ideas and screw them up. So
There's definitely been a lot of collaboration with this. So although I think, you know, the government is out in front in name, Northern Illinois was a really big factor with this. There's a whole series. I could actually just let you take a look at all of the groups that were involved. So that part is really positive. I think the other thing that's important too is the endorsements. That's something to really strive for, and that's exciting. But I think if we get kids potentially just out of study halls, or kids motivated to pass classes so that they could take something else that they're very attached to, I think that's the really big win. And I also do think we've spoken amongst ourselves, and we're very committed to having very diverse groups in these classes. We know that Will and I have a bet talking about how many kids are gonna be able to register for the class. Part of the challenge is they have to have 2 periods in order to take this one, so they have to have the space in order to take the CTE class. But regardless of how many kids register, we want to make sure that we have, you know, kids who were in algebra honors, in sheltered algebra. We want kids who are juniors, who are sophomore, who are freshmen. You know, kids who have an IEP, EL, whatever it is. Like, if there are too many students to be able to have the opportunity this year, then we're really going to ensure that it's a diverse group of kids, because that's important for everybody.
that is very reassuring, and I have utmost faith that left in all of your hands, it will be done right.
Thank you.
So
I
that's
really emphasize that the geometry is not watered down
Right.
in this course, so it is the same geometry that they would get. Classroom is just construction or architecture, but the geometry, very challenging geometry class, but potentially hooks more students, or students are a little more motivated because if they do well in the geometry portion, then they get to go and build something and apply it.
So they get their geometry regular, like, educational credit, and then, like, they can get a credit from, like, TCD or COD, like, if they decide to, like, is it, like, tailored in, like, that regard with, like, a dual?
For this course for right now, it'll just be a CTE credit through an elective credit.
Okay, pretty cool.
It's usually the capstone course in the sequence that is going to be the one that would be, so we would need to have like a construction class that would be certified through COD. That's where that would come through, or kids who do go to TCD, that would be a capstone for that. But like we told the kids, you know, you're already taking math, so that's the geometry credit. The CTE class either counts for your fine arts world language credit, or it counts as one of the credits that you need to graduate anyway. So regardless of how they're taking it at the age they are, it's going to be a credit that counts towards their graduating. So.
Well, thank you for that exciting presentation. All right, speaking of exciting presentations, that moves us to our 2023 tax levy presentation. Now, follow that.
Yeah, probably far less exciting, but just as important. Okay, so thank you. So as we start the fiscal year in July, we see how that budget and the levy are connected in this annual process, and one cannot happen without the other. So what is a tax levy? The tax levy is the amount of money the district requests to meet our anticipated needs, which includes salaries, benefits, maintenance, curriculum, facility needs, geometry and construction. So what is a tax rate? The tax rate is a calculation of the total tax levy divided by all the property owners' EAV. The tax rate is then used to determine levy dollars across all property owners. In 1991, the Illinois General Assembly have passed the PTEL law, or the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, which is also better known as the tax cap law. This initially only affects those collared counties around Cook County, but was also extended to Cook County in 1995. Since then, it has been extended to 39 of the Illinois' 102 counties. As noted here, the tax cap does not cap property tax assessments or individual tax bills. It does, however, cap the rate of increase for government entities and allows for taxes on new property or new construction. As I just noted, the PTEL limits the increase from year to year to the lesser of 5% or CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. As we know, the December 2022 CPI was 6.5%, which will be limited to the 5% when calculating the 2023 tax levy. New construction is then added onto that lesser of CPI, or 5%. With new construction this year, our increase will be over that 5% limit, and as such, a truth and taxation hearing will be required. This hearing will take place at the December board meeting. To calculate the levy, we need to know 4 things: the prior year levy extension, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, the current year equalized assessed valuation, or EAV, and new property or new construction. As you can see, we only know 2 of these items. In order to get the best estimates possible, I inquire with the Wayne and Winfield assessors to get estimates on new construction and the increases to EAV. I have inquired with those local assessors, and I've been told that DuPage County is in the process of updating their data system, and so at this point, we have been provided with no estimates. They gave some best guesses for EAV increases, which was around 6%, and then they noted new construction is probably a little less than last year, probably. So one of the items that we do know is CPI. Here's a 10-year history of CPI. We use the December 2022 value for our calculations, which again is at 6.5%. Even with the 6.5% CPI, CPI still has a 10-year average of only 2.63%. As we look towards next year's December CPI, it is trending to be less than 5%. As I've noted, one of the other estimates is new construction. Overall, as you can see, the new construction has dramatically increased the past few years thanks to the development of the technology park and the over 55 community off of Purnell Road. For this year, as I mentioned, Winfield and Wayne Township assessors have not provided any estimates for the new construction, as DuPage County is implementing a new data platform, and they have not provided the assessors with any estimate. So at this point, the assessors are telling everyone to just use a similar estimate of last year, maybe a little lower. So that's where the $20 million for the 2023 came from. One of the ways that we estimate the change in EAV is to look at prior years and the trends, as well as talking with our local assessors. This chart represents the community's EAV history and its change from year to year. As you can see from the blue bars, the EAV continues to increase at a steady rate, and that change is represented by the red dotted line, which is right around 6%. According to our local assessors, again, there should be an average around 6%. That's their best guess. This chart provides an annual increase to the tax levy extensions. Our recent increases are mainly due to new construction, which accounts for about 2.5% of the increases each year. Reporting fund balances or cash reserves are a newly required section of school code when discussing the levy. These are the cash and fund balances as of June 30th, 2023, as reported on our audited financial statements. Since we report our balances under the cash basis of accounting, our cash and fund balances are basically the same. Our ed fund is at $17.6 million, O&M fund is at $4.9 million, and transportation fund at $1.4 million. We do have a couple of funds that are over that 100% mark. The levy for those specific funds will be held flat with no increase or lower than last year's extension to account for just the needs of the district. Per a new press policy and Illinois School Code 17-1.10, schools are now required, or will be required next year, to present to the board the annual average expenditures of its operational funds for the previous 3 fiscal years at or before the adoption of a levy. We found out about this, so we just added it on to as another slide that we'll also present next year. So with this school code, if the district's cash balances are 2.5 times larger than the average noted, then a reserve reduction plan would need to be filed. With the district just underneath 70%, the district would not need to file this plan with ISB, as we do not meet that criteria. Again, this requirement technically goes into effect next year. So now that we have a little background on what goes into the tax levy, we'll talk about the current levy request. The request is $30.1 million and is based on a 5% increase for CPI and $20 million of new construction and no balloon levy. This is an increase of 6.38% from the prior year extension. At the October COW meeting, my estimates were a little lower than what is being presented to you tonight, which is why the increase is a little higher. Again, the assessors have not been able to provide any estimates other than around 6% increase for EAV and a little less than new construction, so I increased it just a little bit just to be safe. So thus, a truth and taxation hearing will be required, which we will do at the December board meeting. I expect the extension to be finalized closer to $29.7 million based on the 6% EAV increase and the $20 million in new construction. As we break this calculation down a little further, if we take the prior year extension, one of our knowns, multiplied by a CPI, which is another one of our known, we come up with $1.4 million in addition to last year's levy. Next, we can calculate the new property or new construction. So we take the estimated new construction of $20 million and multiply that times the limiting rate, which is 1.9488%. And so with new construction, the district's request is about $389,000. Putting that all together, we come up with the $30.1 million as the expected 2023 requested extension. Again, for actual receipts, I expect this to be closer to $29.7 million minus another $450,000 for abatements. So with the abatements, I expect it to be around $29.2 million. As I just mentioned about abatements, as agreed upon by all taxing bodies in West Chicago, tax abatements will be issued for most of the new construction built into the DuPage Technology Park. For purposes of the tax levy, we still request the full amount, but for actual receipts, the tax abatements will reduce the extension by about $450,000. The estimated impact to taxpayers for this extension is dependent on the EAV for each taxpayer's property and the overall EAV in District 94's boundaries and the tax rate. This is a similar table that I presented at the October COW meeting. So some of the reasons for the levy request includes the ESSER funding will end after FY24. We have many salaries, stipends, SEL supports for students that are paid by ESSER funding. We still have just under $15 million in facility needs, and this does not include any special projects that the district may need in the future, like an automotive class, apparently. I also suspect that we'll be moving to Tier 2 for evidence-based funding in the next couple of years, which will dramatically reduce our annual increases to EBF. And at some point in time, CPPRT is going to come back down to a normal level. So this spreadsheet shows that calculation for the levy. Again, each fund on the left-hand side there is its own separate levy technically. And so as I mentioned, like Social Security and municipal retirement funds are going to be a little less than, I'm only levying what the need of the district is based off of expenses. So I'm keeping those a little lower than normal compared to the other ones. And again, if we only levy the 5% and not do a truth and taxation hearing, The levy amount that's below is about $389,000 that the district would lose and we would never be able to recapture. So timetable is as follows. The public notice will be posted on December 8th, which is in the required window of 7 to 14 days. And then we have the public hearing scheduled for the December board meeting. Once approved, we'll deliver to the county clerk before the last Tuesday of the month in December as required. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. And that brings us to hygieneering remediation proposal.
Keep going. I gotta grab some water. No more presentation. I'm done. On October 5th, our staff noticed some dust or dirt on some of the beams in the Bishop Gym. Not knowing exactly what it was, administration asked hygieneering, who specialize in mold and asbestos remediation, to investigate the dust and confirm what that substance was. On October 13th, hygieneering reported that the dust on the beams was in fact mold. The interim superintendents were notified the same day of the finding. Hygieneering also did an air quality test that day, which showed lower levels of airborne mold spores in the gym when compared to outdoors. So again, based on the air quality sampling, hygieneering had no concern of students or staff to be in Bishop Gym. Hygieneering noted that they would have a remediation specialist investigate and provide a proposal for remediation. On October 26th, we received that attached proposal to remediate their mold. Total cost to remediate is $7,150. We'll ask the board to approve that proposal at the November board meeting.
Any questions or comments?
Have we looked at other places where there's horizontal beams that are maybe collecting stuff? Small gym and field house, stuff like that?
We have.
Everything else is clear?
Yes. And our best guess is it happened in Bishop Gym because of the air handlers that were replaced over the summer. That it's a leftover dust that was in maybe some of the old vents or old air handlers that they have. But we're still investigating exactly. Once it's cleaned, we'll have to make sure that it doesn't come back.
Okay, that brings us to Kubota utility vehicle quotes.
So we currently have a 2007 John Deere Gator. It's used for various activities for athletics and for various building and grounds work on a daily basis. The Gator is 16 years old. It's on its last leg. So we received 3 quotes for a new Kubota to replace the Gator, with the lowest quote at $18,253.40 from First Choice Equipment here in West Chicago. We'll be asking the board to approve this purchase at the November board meeting.
Any questions or comments?
Get a trade-in on the Gator or just scrap it? What do we do with that?
You want to make us an offer?
What would it take for you to drive the Gator home tonight?
I'm not sure if that Gator has much of any value, but we'll definitely look into it, Rich.
Parts, I guess, if nothing else.
Maybe.
All right, backup generator services quote.
All right, so we have 2 generators for the entire building, and both are in need of some service. Both generators are tested frequently, and both are in working order. One was installed in 1999, hasn't had any major service completed on it since 2018. The other was installed in 2018, again, no major service on it since installation. Service on the older generators includes replacements of batteries, thermostat, belts, radiator cap, and oil change, along with a 2-hour load test. Service on the newer generator includes an oil change, replacement of heater hoses and batteries, as well as a 2-hour load test. Once this service is complete, our new maintenance manager, Mike Day, would like to get both generators on an annual service plan to ensure the generators are well taken care of. Quotes to service the generators are attached to the agenda. Service for the older generator is $5,860.85, while the other generator would cost $5,406. I'll again ask for the board to approve these quotes at the November board meeting.
Any questions?
Of course. So those generators are like emergency backup generators? They don't run enough power to light the school and things, right?
Our 2 generators, if the power goes completely out, our 2 generators will run everything in this building.
Oh, really?
Yes. The old generator only has about 700 hours in total on it, and the new generator has about 40 hours total on it. So both should have, life cycle wise, should be last a very long time with good service, which is why it's important that we do an annual service with them.
Okay, roof replacement and repair proposals.
Okay, Olson Roofing reviewed and inspected the roofs we planned on and discussed to replace over the summer. They noted the pool roof definitely needed to be replaced, along with the concession stand roof. They determined that they just needed some service work to be sufficient for the maintenance garage. With some service work, that roof should be fine for another 6 to 8 years. The proposals provided are through the purchasing cooperative TIPS and are attached for your review. Replacement of the pool roof is $288,000. The concession stand proposal was $20,715, and then service work on the maintenance garage was not to exceed $3,200. So the total cost would be $304,465, which is actually $80,000 less than budgeted for this project. Again, we'll have this at the November board meeting for the board to approve.
Any questions?
I do. I see articles all the time about these new steel roofs that, you know, the last roof you'll ever need. Did we look into that? That seems to be ideal for the concession stand. Is that an option or not?
I did not look into that. I can ask Olson Roofing about that, as well as DLA. With any kind of project like this, I always make sure that I go back and forth between the two to make sure that they have seen both projects or both proposals. So we can definitely talk about it. Right now, it sounds like the concession stand is just going to be, we have one layer of shingles on there, and then they're just planning on an overlay for the shingles. So, but I can definitely look into the steel.
How long would we expect another layer of shingles to last then on that?
I would have to check into that. I'm not sure.
But the steel roof, that seems to be the going thing right now, so should at least look into it.
Any other questions? All right, video cameras at student parking lots.
All right, so we've been investigating options to get cameras installed at both of our student parking lots and still be connected to our internal system. After investigating options, our best option appears to be to install an antenna on the roof of our building and get a direct path to the top of a light pole in both parking lots so we can connect wirelessly. This antenna can easily be connected to the parking lot on the Geneva Street, as well as provide wireless access opportunities for the stadiums, such as concession stand, ticket booths, and live streaming of events at the stadium. We do have a direct line of sight to the top of one of the light poles of our main student parking lot, but there are some potential complications to consider. The first complication is the power at the parking lot is not 24/7. So we would need to do some electrical work to get a consistent power supply, which is we do have a quote that would cost us about $7,100. We have confirmed with the city that we can go ahead with this type of work if we so choose. As a reminder, we have an IGA with the city. That's technically their lot. We just do the maintenance on that lot. So then the second complication is that we're pretty sure that the connection will work from the distance. So we're working on a way to test that connection before we do the expensive electrical work. So if our test to connect wirelessly works, we'll move forward with getting electrical work approved by the board. We'll continue to update the board on our progress.
We have, what's the time frame on the IGA that we have with the Kerr-McGee lot? I know it's been kind of
That's a great, I would have to check into that, Rich. We do have an IGA. I do have the copy of that. I would have to look and see if that's a IGA that never ends.
I guess if we're going to make a commitment to that lot, we ought to at least lock up some 20 years or so of availability.
Yeah, I'll check into it. I don't know if that actually ends or if it just continues on.
But with the city, it could be anything, so.
That was
Could
an
be.
excellent question. Any other questions? All right, ISB School Maintenance Grant.
Okay. As a reminder, this is a matching grant up to $50,000, and if approved by ISB, will be used to offset the life safety work already scheduled for next summer. Again, the life safety work total is about $188,000. Attached to the agenda is the certification needed to submit the grant to ISB, and board approval is requirement of the grant, which I will ask at the November board meeting. Rich? Oh.
Rich has left the room for the moment. Any questions from anybody else?
Talk fast. Come on.
I'm done.
All right, shifting gears. Spring 2024 French exchange.
Yes, as we've talked about in previous meetings, the appetite for foreign travel after the pandemic is alive and well, and we have a teacher who would like to sponsor an exchange with a school in France, meaning that this spring we would send a group to France, and then sometime the following school year, to be determined, they would send a group of students to us that we would host for a few weeks, similar to what we did this fall with students from Spain. And in compliance with policy, I'll be bringing this to you for formal approval on the 21st.
Any questions? That sounds like an excellent plan. School report card.
1 second while we change our connections here. As you may be aware, on Monday, the 30th of October, the Illinois State Board of Ed released school report cards for all public schools in Illinois. Along with report cards, we now receive summative designations. I want to take a few minutes just to highlight some of the important points of not only our designation, but some of the additional data points throughout our report card. First, it is very important to note that we are rated as commendable. Since the Illinois State Board of Ed has begun rating schools, we have been commendable every time. As a reminder, the categories are exemplary, commendable, targeted assistance, comprehensive assistance, or intensive assistance, and we have been commendable. Illinois uses a multiple measures formula in which they categorize the factors that you see here in the schoolhouse emblem on the right, and they calculate it through a lot of different weighting and other variables to come out with a score out of 100. As you can see, our overall index score is 70.99 out of a score of 100. To contextualize that for you a little bit, this graph shows the overall index scores for all schools and where we would fall in that. As you can see, about 10% of schools, a little over 10%, fall in that 90 to 100 category, meaning that they're in that top 10% of the score possible. And as you see here, this is where we fall as a school. This puts us in the upper half of all public schools in the state of Illinois. Some positive highlights I do want to bring to the board's attention, but I also want to note that the interactive report card that Illinois maintains is quite user-friendly, and I have to admit has gotten much better over the last 4 or 5 years. I would encourage everyone to go to the report card, type in any school you want, and there are quite a few functions you can go through. One positive is our overall percentage of students requiring remedial college coursework upon entrance into a secondary institution after high school. As you can see, overall, 17.4% of our students require some kind of remedial coursework compared to a state average of almost 29%. The same is true in mathematics, where about 13% of our students do, compared to almost 20% of statewide scores. and then we have about a little less than half of our students as compared to the state average in the area of communications. Another positive I also want to highlight is our freshman on track number. As a reminder, this is the number of freshmen who are passing their core required classes in the graduation required credits and doing so in both semesters of their freshman year. We are at 91% of that with it compared to a state average of 87%. So again, something to be proud of. Areas for growth, areas that we want to make sure that we but continue to look at and then look for areas of improvement. I'm going to highlight our graduation rate. As you can see, our graduation rate for last year's graduation class was 86.1% compared to a state average of 87.6. This represents a dip from previous years where we had been in the low to mid 90 percentages. It also represents one of the cohorts most affected by the pandemic for some of their required graduation courses. Moving on to this slide. I know this one's hard to read and it will be sent to you, but one thing I do want to highlight that has continued is that our 5- and 6-year graduation rates continue to climb, meaning that students who don't graduate after 4 years, we continue to see a very decent bump in that in their 5th and 6th years. So as you can see, last year's 4-year graduation rate was 86%, but 90.4% for a 5-year rate, and then up to 92% for a 6-year rate. And I think that really is a testament to some of the different programs and services we offer to allow students who don't quite finish in that 4-year time frame to do so later on. So this is just a few of the highlights, but some of the things I definitely wanted to bring to your attention. One, to commend the school for reaching that commendable rating, but also to know that these data points, they really become official at the end of October, and we don't see much of it until beginning of October, and a lot of that gets corrected before the end of the month. So now that we have it, we plan on looking at it more deeply, and I would encourage everyone to do the same.
Any questions regarding the school report card? All right, tentative school calendar 2024 to 2025.
Yes, thank you. This is one of the more important and collaborative things that we do year in, year out. You have the memo in front of you, but I will just pull that up here as well. A little bit of a change this year, and I just want to highlight a few of the important things for next year's possible calendar. Had we stuck to our typical pattern of going starting with staff on the second Thursday of August, that would have meant that we would have August 8th as our first day back for staff, which is very early, and then the August 12th for the first day with students. Again, very early, especially with next year being a leap year. It pushes everything back 2 dates on the calendar. This proposal has us starting with staff on a Monday and then starting with students on a Wednesday. One thing I also want to commend the board on, a little over a year ago, you approved our new collective bargaining agreement, and in that is an extended new teacher orientation. Ms. Swartzloff, Ms. Howard do an amazing job putting that together every year, but it takes up a much bigger bandwidth for the building than it used to. This is going to allow us to focus more wholly on new teacher orientation in that week of August 4th to 8th, and then really hit the ground running with staff on the 12th and 13th, and then welcome back all our kiddos on the 14th. Another change I want to highlight is this would also allow us to finish semester 1 before the winter holiday. So we would end on December 20th. That is one thing that we just hear over and over is really, really important to our families and community and to our staff as well, that we put a nice bow on the first semester before everyone goes home for the holidays. We would then return back with staff for an Institute Day on January 6th and welcome students on January 7th. One thing I am going to point out, I did call the regional office to check. President's Day will be celebrated on a Wednesday in the state of Illinois this year. So that is new and unique. If that changes before 2025, we'll change because we've historically celebrated on a Monday. But we may have a very odd middle of the week vacation in late 2025. Also, I want to point out that the regional office is also recommending a March 31st to April 4th spring break in 2025, and this calendar recommends that we follow that. Lehman Middle School and District 33, because of construction, have already put out a calendar. They did a 2-year approval going back, and they would mirror that spring break. This also mirrors the majority of spring breaks in the surrounding area that we know our faculty and staff have students in schools at, so that we would not create any childcare issues for our staff. Additionally, we've communicated with 34 and 25. They typically wait for us to set hours, and then they would look to mirror those breaks as well. So we've been in collaboration with them. And then we would look to have our final exams in the 22nd and 23rd and 27th of May. One of the biggest changes, maybe the biggest, is this calendar would not have us out before Memorial Day. Historically, we've been able to do that. You have to have 176 attendance days. We have to have 4 Teacher Institute, 2 in-service, and a records day. It just doesn't mathematically work to do all of those things and get us out before Memorial Day. However, we would still be out before the start of June, which I think is an overall win. And one highlight I do want to point out briefly is that the semester balance would be 86 and 90. And I know that looks like a 4-day imbalance from semester 1 to semester 2, but we do lose 2 days in semester 2 to SAT and PSAT testing. So it would be rather close with 86 and 88 effective instructional days for the year. So I do want to open it up to input and any feedback. I have met with members of the association to discuss this, but based on your input, we'll continue to have additional conversations. I asked members, the families who were on parent-teacher advisory with you and I, Penny, to give any inputs or any red flags that they might see. And I haven't gotten any input yet, but if that comes up in the next 2 weeks, we can definitely look at that.
I think that the start date, the later start date, I think families are going to appreciate that, because there's a lot of families that still want a vacation that first week of August. And I think that that end date is still very nice because, again, you're still doing it before June, and a lot of districts, most districts do the May end date versus the June end date. So I think a lot of families are going to appreciate that as well.
Good to hear.
I'm glad you explained that to try and make it look good, because I looked at the calendar and went, you're kidding me. You're sending kids back the second week of August?
Yeah.
What happened to the good old days after Labor Day?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I
appreciate your positive spin. I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You and my wife are in the same boat.
Your efforts are respected.
No, it really, as we dug into it, with the requirements from the state of Illinois, requirements on our collective bargaining agreement, and the mandated holidays, it does make it tough. One thing that makes it tough next year, I forgot to mention, Election Day is a mandated holiday now. So that's one more day that you have to give back. And we checked the surrounding areas. Most districts, almost all, are also taking Good Friday off, even though it's very late into April this year, or in 2025. So if we were on that day, it would be challenging again for childcare and our associate districts.
As I said earlier, you let the government, between the state and federal government, they can screw up anybody's vacation plans.
The best laid plans of mice and men, right? Yeah.
Speaking of that, how are we ending up with President's Day on a Wednesday? Where did that come from?
I called the regional office individual who was in charge of calendars, and they said that was a legislative decision.
That the federal government decided? Or
State. That would be Illinois State Legislature.
Okay, so
decided.
it looks like they're shifting to focus on Lincoln's birthday rather than the federal President's Day is kind of, because I think you had it on the 12th of February, so.
Somebody's having a
I believe
party
so.
that day.
President's Day was always in February, but it's always been a Monday.
Right, because, well, there's the Lincoln's birthday and then there's the President's Day, but it looks like they're shifting to focus on the Lincoln.
And based on what's in ISB's platform right now, when you go to put your calendar in, we can't move that you are taking that day off one way or another. So
Like Election Day.
And Election Day.
Maybe one of our governors is getting out of jail that day or something.
Will, can I ask a question? Will,
Yes, sir.
did you, when you called the ROE, did you ask them if a board could change that date?
I didn't ask that question explicitly, but the way it's entered as an HOL in the iWell's platform that we have to enter our calendars through would tell me it would not matter. But I can ask that question.
Yeah, it might be worth it just to see.
Yeah, the only time that has happened, Attila, has been when a school district had either some unique circumstance. It could have been construction, but they had to condense, and they take they have school on holidays. but that is always very problematic. It doesn't happen very often, but I have seen it on rare occasions over the last 10 years, but it was because of some reason, and not just because we don't want to have President's Day on a Wednesday.
Always our concern with legislators
Correct.
over there.
With any luck, that will have, with any luck,
Yeah, me
that
too.
will have been a snow day. Anyway.
Bite your tongue.
I'll see what I can do.
No.
We don't say the word.
It's an e-learning day. It's an e-learning day.
Thank you. Okay.
Digress.
Is there
Any other comments about the calendar?
Is there any work being done at the ROE to try and harmonize the vacations? I know little by little we get closer, but it's still kind of up for grabs on a district-by-district basis.
It is. The ROE releases a memo, and they've already put theirs out for 24-25 with their recommended and required dates for school districts to take off. There's some discretion. As I looked at other districts in the area before I put this together, I was able to see that most seem pretty tight for the most part. Most are taking Good Friday off, and it looked like everyone had aligned with that spring break recommendation.
That's good.
Anything else? All right, that concludes our sessions for open session. We will be needing to move to executive session. There will be no action or discussion taking place after we adjourn from executive session. The recommended motion is to move to executive session for purposes of the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters related to individual students, specifically Title IX investigation, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, specifically the Winfield TIF.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Amos?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Suniga?
Aye.
Ms. Munoz?
Aye.
All right, I want to take 5 before we go to executive session.